Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Kathy Grimm, the Grimm Reader. I come to you today with my top 10 reads of 2022, and I'm a little apprehensive because I won't be able to do the books justice, except to say that they were great. They're in my top 10, but a lot of them are and there is one sheet because it's actually just a story, but I'm still counting it as part of my top 10. For some strange reason, it shows up on Goodreads as a separate thing. So, but it's only 30 pages, so it's not a book. Oh, not even 30, maybe 20. It's a short story, but it's a doozy of a short story. So let's get into it. And here the order is a little bit arbitrary. I mean, not completely. It varies, but it's pretty much set in stone, especially when we get higher up. Let's start off with number 10. So I had a bit of a hard time. The lower ones are a little bit all together. But my number 10 for the year was my second. Now, I know this is not second in the publication order. I am aware of that. But it's second in a different order of the 20 Rougon-Macquart novels of Émile Zola. His Excellency, Son Excellence, practicing my French, Eugène Rougon. Absolutely fun book, fascinating writer, he's a really good writer. And then and this is from a very recent translation apparently by Brian Nelson, and he wrote the introduction as well. And so what's interesting, and I truly love Zola. So in terms of sort of where we stand politically, or just in a general way, how we see the world, my heart is sort of with the people who are on the sort of veering towards socialist spectrum in a certain sense, even though I am completely bourgeois myself, and I understand that we're all we participate in capitalism and all the negative things associated, but still people who, and Zola is one of them, of course. He wrote the J'accuse. He kind of stood up for Dreyfus and the Dreyfus affair, and apparently it kind of messed, or at least influenced, the rest of his life. And I even remember reading somewhere that even his death is sort of unclear, that someone may have messed with him because of what he did. So he's definitely someone who wants to sort of, I skimmed through some of the introduction, he wants to lay bare the seamy side of industrialization and 19th century corruption, and he's not really a fan of what they call the Second Empire. So we're getting into the weeds of 19th century French politics, which is very weedy. But this story is so much fun, and the characterizations of Rougon and his sycophantic group of people who follow him around. Rougon is a politician, and apparently the whole book is very connected to actual people. And one thing I love about it is that it seems, I mean, I'm doing this today on January 5th of 2023, and we all know what happened January 6, 2022. And then this is just after, and I haven't been paying a lot of attention to what's going on in Congress, but there's been like crazy shenanigans and ineptness and politicizing, grandstanding. And it's all about a certain type of power. And this is exactly what this book is about too. And Rougon is kind of, as I recall, it's been a while, it was over the summer, depicted as a very powerful man, and also powerful because he's interested in power. What motivates him is power more than anything else. And so those sort of machinations of putting people in place for that. And his main person he's playing off of is this fantastic female character. I forget her name, Chlorine. She's French, but she's an Italian background. And Chlorinde. Yeah, Chlorinde. I'm looking at a little note I wrote here. He's a very good writer. He moves people around in a room in an effortlessly realistic way. And he's also very good with dialogue. So this is really a lot of fun to read. And I know some people are interested in the Rougon-Macquart, and I might, if I have time, it's always the question, I would like to explain a little bit the reading order issue, because what I found, it's based on a blog that I found that had a list of the reading order, and it goes back to someone who's a friend of Zola's. Anyway, already 4 minutes on book 10, so I'm going to leave it for that. Very good. I love Zola. I love him more than Balzac, but I'm willing to read more Balzac to really find. I've only read one, so we'll see. But so far my heart belongs to Zola. I love him. I love Zola. Number 9. So this is Friends and Relations, my first Elizabeth Bowen, but definitely not my last. I absolutely love this book. So in terms of my taste, you'll see something here, and it's not exactly niche, but it's rarefied. I do love the very, very poetic. Some people might call it pretentious. I could sort of see that some other people might be pretend, but I don't think so. And I mean, I just love it. And what I loved about this is the style of kind of oblique, still kind of trying to get at what's inside people in terms of their emotions and their feelings towards one another. It's about relations. It's about jealousy. It's about, it's about these two sisters who get married. But in terms of plot, as I gather, the first marriage, the husband kind of also likes the other sister. So there's a dynamic there, and it's all about friends and relations, and it's definitely upper class England, and not that much happens, but it's almost like something could happen or something almost happens, and it's just told in a really wonderful way. It's really the style that blew me away. I like this more than, I rate it higher than any of the Barbara Pims I've read, and I've only read one, Mirror Spark, and it was okay. So this is great. This is very literary, but I absolutely loved it. The next book is my only ebook, so I'll put a picture here. I want to get a copy of it for sure. And this was where I had a hard time placing it in terms of the order, because I really did love it. But it's the kind of book that I don't think is for everyone. And it's basically because of the style. So it's Ricky Ducornet, still with us, author. And the way I found her is through serendipity. So Sean from Traveling Through Literature, wonderful booktuber here, posted a pile of books that he had just acquired on Twitter. And for some reason, I saw this book, I think it was a different book, or maybe it was the same book. Anyway, the book I'm talking about is Fortunes of Neptune by Ricky Ducornet. And I just honed in on that book, and I got a copy, and what I usually do is I get a sample and see if I like it, and I liked it, and I got the whole thing, and I read it. And then I absolutely blew me away. It's a very densely poetic book with a really weird frame structure, and she's playing a lot with fairy tales and mythology. So it has it's very layered. In a way, I would benefit from an annotated copy, so you could see all the references to all the different mythology and fairy tales. But it is a story. It has a lot of plot too, and the plot's sort of strange. It has to do with someone who's fallen into a coma and who's dreaming, and who kind of recreates their life in a dream world. So you can see it's very it's almost like fantasy, a certain type of literary poetic fantasy, and retellings of fairy tales. And the thing about Fortunes of Neptune is, and I am peering at a wiki page here, I'll just quote it because it's not bad. Ducornet uses the themes of nature and magic in many of her works. So she's interested in psychoanalysis, she's interested in psychology, and I guess I am too, in dreams and sleeping and the self and imagination, all these sort of interior things. So she's interested in the themes of nature and magic. Ducornet's tetralogy of elements was influenced by the ancient idea of the 4 elements, and that's another one of my weird obsessions. So, but for me, it has more to do with alchemy, but still the 4 elements just as an idea. So earth, fire, water, and air. And so she dedicated 4 of her novels to the elements: The Stain, Entering Fire, The Fortunes of Neptune, and The Jade Cabinet. And I really want to read all of them. And The Fortune of Neptune is, of course, the water one. So a lot of the tale takes place in this dream world that this person who's sleeping has created. And it's almost like, it's sort of like, if you remember in David Copperfield, the stuff where he's living in the house with the people near the ocean. So it's sort of like infused with almost Robert Louis Stevenson, like they hang out in pubs and bars, and they talk about pirates and all this kind of thing. It sort of it's infused with the seaside shanties and all that stuff in a very fun but poetic way. And I remember the beginning, I was just looking, is a quote from one of the inscriptions at the beginning is, from Moby Dick. So that's another, there's a lot of, it's over determined in terms of its referencing other works. And so I love that stuff. But it's not for everyone. Because, I mean, that's one thing you'll see, and even in my next choice, actually quite a few of them, well, the next for sure, these are modernists or perhaps even postmodern writers. And so they're kind of in dialogue with things that many of us don't really, are not familiar with, and so there is a certain type of, I don't want to call it gatekeeping, but, you know, it's as if this is why people don't like Finnegan's Wake, which I have read a few pages of. I participated in actually a really fun thing where we read a page a day and talked about it on Twitter, and it was actually really great, and I found a website. But see, people know the difficulty of Finnegan's Wake. It doesn't really make sense until you unravel the layers of what he's doing with language, and other works of literature, and history is embedded in there too. Like, you know, he'll say, some character will say something and it turns out it's a reference to something that happened in Ireland. And then the form too, the narrative structure is very complicated. And so that's just not what a lot of people are not interested in that kind of reading. And they read for other reasons. And in a way, I can sort of understand that. But I love it. And the thing about the Duquesne is it was still a good book, even if you don't know all the references, in my opinion. It was very well written. I really think the key for me, I keep saying it, is the style. If it's a well-told book, I will go with you almost anywhere if I like your style. And it's actually an interesting thought. Are there people who are stylists who I don't like, or whose style I don't like? But see, there it's also usually connected to, like, the content is just so off-putting. So I'm thinking of one of my DNFs, the On Being Blue by William Gass. I'll have to think about that more. And I completely concede that my love of these stylists or this style is a minority view sometimes, but what can you do? Speaking of niche and minority views, this is the one that's actually just a short story, and it's the first. So Arno Schmidt, German postmodern writer, and whom I had never read, and I just read the first story here, and I'm going to probably pronounce it in a German way, even though it's apparently a made up Greek word, entumesis, and it always it's also always published with these little letters next to it in German, W.I.E.H. And there's a translation that I've linked to on my Linktree. If you want, I can send you a copy of the PDF of the story. So it's a story about 30 pages long, and extremely. So this is where I really want to do it justice, because it's extremely layered. But it's basically the diary of a geographer and it takes place in ancient Greece. I don't know exactly what century, 200 BC or something. And it's his diary, and I forget his name. He's a pupil of, maybe his name is Philostratus. I think he's made up. And he's a pupil of an actual geographer who's known, see, I'm not so good with the Greek here. Eratosthenes of Cyrene. I think he's the Eratosthenes. So Eratosthenes, there's cute little YouTube videos of Carl Sagan showing he's one of the early people who found out that the Earth was round. And so it's sort of going back to science stuff, and in terms of you know, what does the world look like? And this is a diary of someone who disagrees with the roundness of the world, and it's because he's hanging on to a wrong idea, despite his being a brilliant person. And his wrong idea is he wants the world to be flat, because then it can keep going infinitely. It doesn't have to. The roundness seems kind of claustrophobic to this person. Okay, so as you can see, very complicated. And he wrote the story. Apparently, I read somewhere, it says it was conceived in 1944, but he wrote it down in 1946. And like, how do they know that? But what's going on there, and I'll have to check exactly when Schmidt came back from the war. I think it was a British prisoner of war. So he's in North, like my father was very, very young in the war, didn't see much. And then he was captured by the Russians. So he's a Russian prisoner of war. But anyway, it's sort of connected to Germany and 0 Hour and all that stuff. And in the diary, we sort of see his madness. and we see how he gets rid of the people that he's with. And the main other people are, there's a Roman person, Emilianus, and it's a lot about how Emilianus's relationship to the Romans and the sort of at the level of state and their relationships to the state, and all of that is of course allegorically or metaphorically, I would say allegorically connected to the present in a certain sense. I think you could argue that these people and their relationships to each other and to the state can be sort of transferred back and forward in time. Another thing, and so that's all that even that is not doing it justice, but I love this story. And the reason I loved it, guess why? The style. I absolutely love the style. And it almost reads like a 19th century. Someone even said this is a story like E.T.A. Hoffmann. It's very, very 19th century, very kind of, there's a lot of fairy tale stuff. And I know, for example, Schmidt had these odd obsessions. He was obsessed with this German writer, very popular writer, Karl May, whose works I cannot read because they're just so cliched and the writing is just like, ugh. Very, very popular works for boys, like adventure novels, and his famous indigenous character, Witty too. It's just, they're so popular in Germany with a certain type of, like my father loved them, but then he also kind of liked Arnold Schmidt. Anyway, Arnold Schmidt loved Karl May, and I could sort of see, this is like extremely literary, poetic Karl May stuff. And yeah, it's just, the writing is wonderful. It's sort of 19th century. It's old-fashioned, and but then it has these modern connections too. I love this story so much. It's The Diary of a Madman. Absolutely fantastic story, and I will continue my project with Arnold Schmidt. I have a whole bunch. This is Arnold Schmidt here. He looks over my study. And he was a very interesting person. He's sort of like the antithesis of someone like Thomas Bernhard, in the sense that he always kept his distance from the literary establishment. He was always poor. He's committed to his work in a very kind of deep way, to the word, to the writing. Moving on with my modernist stuff, coming in at number 6. Absolutely fantastic work of fiction by Joseph McElroy, my first, but definitely not my last McElroy. I know he's written really long ones, and apparently this is his most accessible one. The Letter Left to Me was really, really good. So it's about a 15-year-old boy whose father has passed away, and his mother hands him a letter written by the father, and it takes place in the 40s, or late 40s, I think, even though it was written in 1988. And here again, it's the telling of the story, the oblique modernist way of connecting his interior thoughts to his past, to his family, to his father, and relationships to his father. The writing is amazing, astounding, and it's very, very, very moving writing too. Very, very. It's a way of getting at deeper emotions in a poetic way, in a sort of rarefied but useful. It's in a way I find that useful. It's not sort of too much pathos. It's well, it is. I mean, it does get to these deep feelings. I have one quote here. It's kind of in the middle of the book. So this is, the narrator is the boy, the 15-year-old, but he moves through time. He gets older and goes to college at some point. Anyway, he writes here, "My father was held to have a command of language. His talk survives in our memory. He punned. He talked history. He says Joe Louis is more than human, but not just a machine. My father predicts the round, or we're at a ball game in the upper deck staring down at Dixie Walker, and my father says, he's due for a hit. My father knew French. He loves sports, but hasn't the time. He listens so carefully, if only he could be present to hear his lawyer friend, who was once at Oxford, telling me in great eloquent detail how right he thought my father's letter was. My father spoke Latin at a party he and my mother went to. He quoted poetry." So the sort of racing thoughts, the intertwining of past and present in the tenses he uses, and it really kind of gives you this vivid memory of the father, and how, and also we see him remembering. That's what this book is. It's, remembering times past. It's, and remembering them, bringing them back into the present in a certain sense. So he's doing wonderful things with the tenses, and the style is amazing. I highly recommend this book. Not very thick if you're interested in a Joseph McElroy. He's one of these people who are part of the canon, connected to a Discord of a booktuber who I won't, well, should I say who it is? I don't know if I should. I don't think I should. But anyway, and they talk about, you know, they have a canon. Cormac McCarthy, of course Joyce, who else? Schmidt, Arno Schmidt is in their canon, Joseph McClure is in their canon. They they brought me to Gaddis in Gas, and by they I mean the people on this server, and even Margaret Young, who I'll get to later on. So I'm very deeply indebted to this group of people who read this stuff, and I go in and out of the Discord just for time reasons, because you know Discord's like another social media thing that keeps me away from reading. So do I need that? On the other hand, it's a group of people whose reading tastes I usually am in line with, but I know that some of my reading tastes are not in line with this. When I start reading cozy stuff, they're not into the cozy. And it's a good group of people though. I like them too, and a lot of them, some of them have channels too. So shout out to the Discord if you know who I'm talking about. Let's see. So that was coming in at number 6, and I would never have this person would never have even been on my radar were it not for this Discord. So I mean, in general, BookTube in general, like Ricky Ducournay, I would not, before I saw that picture, I did not know who she was, and she's still alive. She's just, there's just so many great people out there, and it's hard to sort of keep track of all of them. Getting into the top 5. And some of these are more recent reads, so I will be able to get away with saying less of them because we're already at over 20 minutes. Before the Storm, the book that took me months and months to read, but was absolutely amazing, by Theodore Fontana, published in 1878, so we're getting into the 19th century works here. Close to my heart, partly because it took so long to read. Also, the writing is fantastic. It takes place, as I've been saying over and over again, 1812 to 1813. And the ending was good. It was a little sad. It was kind of sad, but you kind of knew someone had to, you know, go. It was very moving and very well written, and I love Theodore Fontana. He's in my canon for sure. That's all I'll say, because I've been talking about that book for a long time. So I put it at number 5. So here we get into the top 4. I put The Last Chronicle of Barset at 4. Such a wonderful reading experience. The whole Barsetshire Chronicles, highly, highly recommended. I loved it so much. It made me cry. It was so great. Trollope is just my jam, totally. And so this was published in 1867. So a little bit before Fontana and a little bit after some of the other people that are coming up. Let's see, 1867, and then Rougon was 1876. So that's almost the same as, oh yeah, of course Zola is the same time as Fontana, and I do see connections. They're the naturalists, the realists, the naturalists. And Trollope is more kind of staunchly Victorian. Amazing book. You should all read Trollope if you like this stuff. Number 3. I'm so glad I got to read this. Oh, my pile is falling. So it's 3 in 1, like that. Let me show you the lovely covers. Kristin Lavransdatter. This is definitely one that I listened to mainly, but then we'll come in here and look at this one, which was a different translation. This is the earlier translation. And so the whole thing, it starts with this one, which was probably still my favorite, just because it was the one where I said it was, think of Little House on the Prairie, but in the 14th century, because of her deep love for her father. She idolized her father in a kind of similar way, and then it gets not like that anymore, because it gets more, it gets dark, well, not darker, but just more realistic in terms of the stuff she has to deal with. Oh my gosh. And so it was definitely less happy, but still extremely moving and extremely well done. So if you take it as a whole thing, amazing listening and reading experience. Highly recommend Kristin Lavransdatter. Published it has never been out of print in this country since its first publication in 1927. That's English. And she got the Nobel Prize for this too. Published 1920 to 1922, taking place, I think, in, I would say, 14th century Norway. So, you know, historical fiction of a sort. Absolutely loved it. So moving to listen to and then read. Sigrid Undset's trilogy embodies more of life seen understandingly and seriously than any novel since Dostoevsky's brothers Karamazov, says something called Common Wheel. It's an amazing story and very well told, and I'm very glad I finally listened and sort of read it. That was my number 3. Oh, we're getting into the last 2. Exciting. Guess what they are? People can probably guess. if they've been following my channel. And I do think that it is 2 in 1. But this is like an amazing once in a lifetime listen. Read Bleak House. I just loved it so much. I even loved it more than Trollop in a certain sense, because I think it's epic. I think it's harnessing, it's just such a good description of the darkness and bleakness of certain aspects of British Victorian society. The woman who completely neglects all of her house because she's obsessed with helping people far, far away, which is such an interesting concept. I saw a term, something to do with telescope charity or something, where you kind of look far away instead of close. And just all the characters are so memorable, and it's very funny. And then spontaneous combustion. Yeah, I'm here for that. I mean, it has everything. And some people didn't like Esther. I love Esther. Esther is like Fanny from Mansfield Park. She's close to my heart. She's like Jane Eyre. She's all these goody ladies who I kind of love. I don't care that they're goody. Leave me alone, my goody people. But she's just she is self-denying and, always kind of trying to internally jolly herself along, which I have to do too. So I love these. And I love the other person perhaps even more. The third person narrator is amazing. And there you kind of feel that it's like Dickens talking. So I love the intertwining of the two characters, the two. I really think that's part of why I loved it so much. I mean, it's just an amazing novel, and epic in scale. The plot is, I'm not going to attempt it. The law. As it says here, Bleak House defies a single description. A mystery story, or the law stuff, the case, Jaundice and Jaundice. So a lot of the characters are not really realistic, but it doesn't matter. It's still an amazing book. It's not realism. It's not, it's something else, whatever Victorian stuff is. But it captures something real, if that makes sense, I think. The overdrawn aspect of the characters still are getting at something. So it's sort of almost like satire in certain aspects, some of the characters. The person who is always like throwing things at this old lady, and I think he sometimes even throws her. I forget her name, Jelly something. I mean, the characters are amazing, and it's just so memorable. I mean, if you love anything Victorian, you need to read Bleak House. And I will go to other Dickens. I'm still a little bit afraid of doing all of the Dickens because I'm not sure. I tried to listen to Oliver Twist once, and it was too dark in the beginning. Maybe it was just a time thing. I loved David Copperfield. That was on my list last year. So I'm not sure which Dickens I'll go to next. Oh, maybe Mutual Friend. That's a good one. Might do that one. We'll see. And now we come to my best book of 2022. I'm so glad I found her. She is my most favorite person in the world. Margaret Young, Angel in the Forest. Niche, I know. Tell me about it. Written in 1945, and it's actually sort of nonfiction. Sort of. I mean, it's an extremely lyrical telling of the history of the town, New Harmony, in very southern tip of Indiana. I have been there. It's a beautiful town that was an epic town of two utopian communities. First, this guy, George Rapp, he went there in 1814 and wanted to bring about a new Jerusalem, scriptural communism. And so so similarly with Zola, she definitely has kind of socialist leanings in her. You can just tell. And this is the 40s, so I'm not quite sure. But the reason why I love the book so much, and Margaret Young, and Miss Mackintosh, my darling, even though I've only read a little bit of it, is again the way she writes. And it's very poetic. I just think she has such a command of language. And it just she pulls you along with her beautiful prose. She pulled me along through the whole book with her beautiful prose. Every sentence, every word is amazing. I think she's an amazing writer. And there's no wrong word. There's nothing sort of misplaced here. Sometimes people might think this is pretentious, but I don't care. I love it. I love it. And she was such an interesting lady. She was very much connected to the I.O. writing workshop. She's very much centered in the Midwest, though, Indiana specifically. And this is sort of an ode to the Midwest, mythologizing this wonderful little town. It is also kind of factual. So she's writing about this place in a realistic way, yet it's completely poetic, but it's all true. So it's like poetic nonfiction of a sort. She writes a lot about Robert Owen, the second person who came from Scotland, about his upbringing. And I remember really enjoying finding out more about his life and how... And then she kind of gets into his head, and she kind of depicts him as someone who was so full of uplifting utopian ideas, but he was a little bit oblivious to those close to him. So again, a kind of telescopic charity type thing. He didn't quite understand his wife. He went somewhere else, and then New Harmony was sort of left to falter. The Third Age of New Harmony. This one I read with someone on Twitter, Paper Pills, and she does sort of readings on Twitter, and the way we did it was I did it 10 pages a week. And as a very slow reader, I was proud of myself that I was able to get through it. I think I was even reading it during a semester. And I had to sit down and read my 10 pages and think about things. It's 300 and something pages long. But I wanted to sort of do it because I knew I wouldn't be able to finish Miss Mackintosh in any kind of normal way. Miss Mackintosh is going to take me a lot of years to read. She attended Indiana and Butler universities and received her master's degree from University of Chicago and did graduate work at the University of Iowa. And in the end, she ends up in Brooklyn, I think, and sort of becomes friends with Anais Nin. I have never read Anais Nin, who's basically known for her diaries. Tell me if you know more about her. And she had this lovely apartment, and I'll see if I can post a picture of her apartment where I found once a group of photos that now I don't have anymore. It's so frustrating on the internet, where they had more pictures of her. She collected dolls. So it's just her with her doll collection in this eccentric Brooklyn apartment. I mean, come on, I just love her so much. Anyway, that was my chat. I would definitely put chapter headings in here since this is going to be an extremely long video apparently. And thank you all for watching my channel and commenting. Tell me what you think of my list. And onwards to 2023, I think I did the challenge as 35 books because, you know, if that's what I did last year, let's see if I can do it this year. And I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about it. You know what? I'm not going to worry about it. See you all later. Thank you all for bearing with me. And I will see you soon with another reading update at some point. We'll see. Bye-bye.